Last thing, we've looked at 4 out of the 5 social primary goods. Rights and liberties, that was the principle of equal liberty, and we saw why people in the original position would accept that. Income and wealth, that was the difference principle. We saw why people in the original position would accept that. Lastly, we have opportunities. That's the last social primary good that Rawls mentions. This will be much quicker. We're not going to do a bunch of graphs or anything like that. We're just going to look at the kind of thought process that they go through. This is, I think, fairly straightforward, right? So we have our people in the original position. Well, what are they going to be thinking when it comes to the distribution of opportunities? Well, just like we saw when we started with income and wealth, their first thought is probably going to be something like, let's just distribute it equally. No idea which group I'm going to be in. No idea. Opportunities should be given out equal to everyone. Should have an equal opportunity for any position. You know, especially for kind of these high-paying, high-prestige jobs. You know, these positions or offices to which the social and economic inequalities are attached, right? As we talked about last time, right? So something like a CEO, that's a high prestige, high paying job, especially jobs like that, right? We should make it so everyone can get one of those, because it's pretty nice to have all that prestige and all that money. You can really further your own interests if you have that, but I have no idea what kind of person I'm going to be. So let's just make it so everybody has an equal opportunity to get those positions, right? I mean, at the very least, we don't want those opportunities to be like limited along racial or gender lines or anything like that. Or, you know, we don't want people of one particular race or one particular gender or of one particular economic class to be kind of forbidden or barred from certain opportunities, right? Because I might be in that group. I might be that race, that gender, that economic class. And, you know, I wouldn't like that, right? That would, again, be detrimental to me furthering my own interests if those kinds of opportunities were closed off to me just because of my race or gender or economic status or whatever it might be, right? So because people are behind the veil of ignorance, they're going to say something like these characteristics. You know, you could add the other thing, right? Religion and age and so on into the mix too. These characteristics should not be taken into account when we're distributing opportunities, when we're considering which kinds of opportunities should be open to people, right? Every race, gender, sexual orientation, economic class, age, and so on should have equal opportunity for these positions, for these high-paying, high-prestige positions, right? And again, I think this idea is fairly intuitive. It's easy to understand why people in the original position would think like that. But there's a little bit of a wrinkle. What Rawls thinks is that people in the original position would likely, right, be happy to let these high-paying, high-prestige jobs, which require a high degree of skill and talent to be performed effectively. People in the original position would be happy to allow those kinds of positions to go to people with a high level of talent or skill. People in the original position would be happy to do that regardless of not knowing what kind of skill or talent they have, right? And you can think of it like this. Let's say, you know, I'm in the original position. I don't know if I'm going to be a particularly talented or skilled person. I don't know if I'm going to have the ambition and the charisma and the intellectual acumen or whatever it might be that's necessary for success in today's world. I don't know if I'm going to have all that stuff. But even not knowing that, even knowing that, you know, if we tie these positions, if we allow these positions to go to the people with all the talents and skills, and that might not be me, and so I might not get these positions, people in the original position are still going to say that's okay. Why? Because if you allow those positions to go to people with the skills and talents for performing those positions effectively, well, then everybody's going to be better off, right? If you allow someone like, I don't know why this is the guy I always think of. I don't even really like this guy, but if you allow someone like Steve Jobs, sorry, not to, now half you hate me probably because you really like Steve Jobs, but if you allow someone like Steve Jobs to, what was I going to say? By allowing someone like that, right? A highly kind of ambitious, talented, creative person, you allow someone like that to have one of these high prestige, high paying jobs or whatever, something like that, right? Allow them to earn a whole bunch of money and so on. That's good for everybody, right? That's going to raise everybody up. Now everybody can go buy a phone for $1,000. Well, maybe not everybody. But now everybody has access to these products, right? These people, these high skilled, high talented people, they increase the productivity of society generally, which makes all groups better off. And so even if I might not end up having considerable talents or skills, and so I may be effectively barred from fulfilling these positions, that's okay, because by allowing those positions to go to people with talents and skills, society in general is better off. Every group is better off. And so that's okay, right? That's just the fair equality of opportunity principle. That's just to say people in the original position would accept the fair equality of opportunity principle. Social and economic inequality should be attached to positions and offices open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity. I forgot to write that out there, so I just said it for you, but you can go back, read it in Rawls or see it in an earlier video. Now we've seen Rawls's argument for the two principles of justice, why people in the original position would accept those two principles of justice, right? We've got our conception of the original position, and we have the two principles of justice that people would come to agree upon in that original position. Further wrinkle that we've added is this talk about social primary goods. The social primary goods that are relevant to the principle of equal liberty, rights and liberties. The social primary goods that are relevant to the fair equality of opportunity principle, opportunities. And the social primary goods that are relevant to the difference principle are wealth and income, right? And so Rawls's view now, we've kind of seen the argument. People in the original position would accept these two principles for the reasons we just gave, right? Go watch the whole video again if you like. And so these are the true, legitimate, fair principles of social justice. This is what fairness requires, that we structure our society around these kinds of principles, that we don't allow inequalities unless they benefit the least advantaged, that we make sure all positions, all positions to which social or economic inequalities are attached, right? High-paying, high-prestige positions. We make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to them, a fair, equal opportunity to them, which does not mean that you just have to give it out willy-nilly, right? You can still discriminate on the basis of talent or skill for the position. Moreover, right? Because the principle of equal liberty, right? We're going to want our society to afford equal rights and liberties to all people, right? And so the principle of equal liberty has certain very direct and concrete ramifications for what a political constitution should look like. Not an absolute monarchy. That's not how we do things. That would be unjust. That would be unfair. It's unfair to the people who are deprived of any kind of political liberties. Right? Political liberty should be equal. We should have something like a democracy, right? That follows fairly straightforwardly from the principle of equal liberty. What about our economic structures? What should they look like? Well, here's just one example to end with. Take something like a progressive tax or taxation more generally. How should the taxes go? In light of the difference principle, What Rawls is going to be concerned with primarily is how the least advantaged are benefited or not benefited by some particular policy. And so when it comes to something like taxation, I think it's fairly straightforward to make a case for a progressive tax along Rawlsian lines, because progressive tax, if you're shifting to, say, a progressive tax from something like a flat tax, you are shifting more of the tax burden onto your most advantaged groups. And you're shifting less of it. Well, I should put it this way. You're shifting more of it away from your least advantaged groups. And by shifting more of that tax burden away from your least advantaged groups, you're benefiting your least advantaged groups. That's the kind of policy, the kind of structure to society that the difference principle would enjoin, right? And so people in the original position would likely favor something like a progressive tax. And the reason why, so this is what Rawls would want to say, the reason why certain rich people might not is, well, because they're biased in their own favor. If they were in the original position, they probably would favor the progressive tax. Indeed, Rawls is committed to saying they definitely would favor the progressive tax. And if you recall earlier, we talked about how Rawls wanted to say, look, even somebody from like a lower class, lower social economic class who was advocating for something like a progressive tax, that's an instance of bias. And Rawls would stand by that, right? If you're advocating for something like a progressive tax just because it benefits you, which I think he thinks people do, right? Yeah, that's no good. That's unfair. But that doesn't mean the policy's no good. The policy might, in fact, be just. And in fact, I think Rawls would say it is. But what's needed to see that is that we step into the original position. And so, yeah, the lower socioeconomic class person might at the end of the day be right that we should have something like progressive tax. But the reasons they give for it are wrong. And they're kind of biased and not and being partial. And that's no good. That's no sign to what justice requires, right? And so to see that justice actually requires something like that, right, we have to kind of leave that guy behind, go behind the original position. And if we were to invite that guy with us, right, he'd come with us too behind the original position. He too would see, along with the rich fella who's there with us now, right, we'd all see that something like a progressive tax, which benefits the least advantaged, yeah, we should do that. That would be a good way of arranging society. That'd be a fair and just way of arranging society, because if we were in the original position, that's how we would choose to do it.